Hello students, today we will discuss the development of the spinal cord. Now this spinal cord is developed from the caudal cylindrical portion of the neural tube. So these are the steps you are supposed to write while writing the development of the spinal cord. So initially the cavity is in the form of dorsoventral cleft. Later on the lateral walls they become thick, but the roof and floor they remain thin. So in this diagram, in first diagram, it is shown that single layered neural tube is formed. So what is happening next to it? The subdivision into ependymal, mental and marginal layer happen in the lateral wall as well as on the roof and floor portion. No doubt the roof and floor portion they are thin, but further subdivision of that layer, that is the wall of the neural tube, it shows three layers basically from inner to outer side. So you can see in the first diagram, this is in the second diagram. Then is further the faster and more growth of the mental zone in the ventral part it happens. So once this is happening, the ventral part of the neural tube is compressed with that. You can see here. So the compression of the cavity is there on the ventral side. Then line separating the compressed ventral part from the dorsal part is called as sulcus limitans. You can see here. So a demarcation is formed between these two portions with the appearance of the sulcus limitans. The lateral wall of the developing spinal cord can be divided into dorsal or alar lamina and ventral or basal lamina. So this is because of the appearance of that sulcus limitans with the growth of the mental layer of the ventral portion of the spinal cord, developing spinal cord. Now with the growth of alar lamina, the dorsal part of the cavity, it obliterates and forms the posterior median septum, but while the ventral part of the cavity, it remains patent and it forms the central canal. But with the growth of the basal lamina, it projects on either side of the midline. You can see the growth which is projecting on either side of the midline, which is basically forming the anterior median fissure now. Now in this diagram you can see, you know the structure of the spinal cord. The gray matter is lying in the center, which is surrounded by the white matter, and the gray matter is H-shaped. Then spinal cord has dorsal root, it has ventral root. So first is the axons of the neurons from the dorsal gray column that enter the marginal layer to form the ascending tracts. That is important. So whatever be the neurons, they are lying in the dorsal gray column, they enter into the marginal layer to form that ascending tract. Similarly, the axons of the neuron developing in various parts of the brain grow downward in marginal layer to form the descending tracts. So this is how the ascending and descending tracts are formed. Ascending tracts are basically, these are the axons of those cells which are lying in the dorsal column, dorsal gray column. But descending tracts are the axons of those neurons which are lying in the different parts of the brain, that is developing brain, and they just grow downward in the marginal layer. Then comes the dorsal nerve root is formed by processes of cell lying in the dorsal root ganglia. So in the dorsal root ganglia, the nerve cells are present and their processes which are just moving towards the spinal cord, they form the dorsal nerve root. Now these cells which are lying in the dorsal root ganglia, they are derived from neural crest. And the ventral root is formed by, here you can see the ventral root is formed by the axons of the neuron in ventral gray column. So this is basically the development of the different, you can say the axons or different tracts which are present in the spinal cord. So in the dorsal root, the cells which are present, their axons, they form the ascending tract, and the cells which are present in the ventral gray column, they form the ventral root of the spinal nerve. Then comes the axons of the neuron which are lying in the various parts of the brain. They are descending in the marginal layer because the same pattern is happening during the development of the different parts of the brain. So they are just traveling through the marginal layer, reaching to the spinal cord as descending tracts. So only one thing is left, that is the cells present in the dorsal you can say ganglia. So those cells are basically derived from neural crest. So these things you are supposed to write. These are very important things. So points to remember is the marginal layer and mantle layer, two layers are there. Inner is the ependymal layer, which is just lining the cavity of the neural tube. So marginal layer, in the marginal layer what is lying? Ascending and descending tracts, and these ascending and descending tracts are forming the white matter. And mental layer has alar lamina and basal lamina. In the alar lamina it forms the posterior gray column, and basal lamina it forms the anterior gray column. So this is all about the development of the spinal cord. It is very short but very important. So I have described the whole of the spinal cord in different points with a clear diagram. So these diagrams are taken from your standard textbook. Thank you very much.